can change the world
with my own two hands.
Make a better place
with my own two hands.
Make a kinder place
with my own two hands.
Look at our hands. Think of all the hands we've held.
I met a young girl who eagerly explained to me what a hurricane was. She said it was 3 things. 1, it was very dangerous. 2, it was 2 different winds chasing each other. And 3, it changes people's lives. She told me of how she stood inside her house behind a sliding glass door and watched as the winds raged about. Her house was so ruined after the hurricane, she had to move to Indiana, where she spent the next year. Even though she didn't want to leave her home, she had to make the best of her situation. She quickly became accustomed to her surroundings, and when it was finally time for her to return home to Mississippi, her class threw her a big party, and she received cards from every student in her class, but one, who she told me happened to be sick that day.
I met a woman named Barbara. She had a husband and a daughter who was a senior in high school last year. She had lived in a town in Mississippi her whole life with her grandparents, parents, aunts, and uncles. That is, until the hurricane destroyed all their 70-some-year-old houses. When returning to the neighborhood several days after the storm, the family was silenced by the sights. Her husband's truck was blocks away from her house. Her father's home was now only a foundation, and her house was torn open to expose her kitchen and all the other rooms combined together. She recalled the week before the storm and all her normal monotonous activities. Her family was at a school football game on Friday night, and she never could have imagined not having a house on Monday morning.
I met a 70-some-odd-year-old man named Robert James, who went by RJ for short. He lived about 2 blocks from the beach. When he and his wife found out the storm was coming, his wife decided she would seek shelter farther from the coast while he rode it out. In order to protect his house, RJ tucked towels beneath the door jambs to try and keep the water outside, but about half an hour into the storm, he realized that wouldn't help at all. RJ watched through his front door as the winds blew debris in and the waves dragged the rubbish back out. The water rose higher and higher until it reached up to his chest. In the middle of the storm, RJ looked up to the sky and screamed, "You are God and I am man. Prove it." And God did. RJ's house was surrounded by a 5-foot-high brick retaining wall, which during the storm protected the house from flying debris. The wall eventually crumbled, but RJ's home was salvageable, suffering only from water damage. When the storm died down, RJ laid down on his floating bed. When his wife returned to town, she found him laying in his bed, covered in a blanket of mud, drinking from a 6-pack of Heineken and hanging out with a squirrel. In RJ's last words with us, he said, "Everything is temporary," and that could never be more true.
I can make peace on earth
with my own 2 hands.
I can clean up the earth
with my own 2 hands.
I can reach out to you
with my own 2 hands.
Look at our hands. Think of all the tools we've held.
I worked for 4 days in Biloxi, Mississippi.
I built a brick wall with my own 2 hands.
I painted a porch with my own 2 hands.
I rototilled a lawn with my own 2 hands.
I raked through grass with my own 2 hands.
I pulled weeds with my own 2 hands.
I leveled a yard with my own 2 hands.
I cleaned up remains of destruction with my own 2 hands.
I spackled, painted, and sanded with my own 2 hands.
I'm going to make it a brighter place. I'm going to make it a safer place. I'm going to help the human race.
With my own 2 hands.
I saw what was left of Hurricane Katrina. The visible changes are still prevalent in every moment of the natives' lives. There are still garbage and trees, toys, and personal belongings scattered to the ground, not yet claimed. Bent poles and broken signs indicate locations of stores that once stood and now are non-existent. I pass a cemetery every day whose mausoleum were flattened to the ground and whose tombstones were knocked over or shattered in pieces. Blue tarps marked the tops of houses who had been damaged during the storm. Whole floors were missing from buildings. Spray paint marked the doors, telling me brief stories of the families who lived within. Water lines reached up over my head, showing me where a flood once stood. A 30-day notice warned residents of a FEMA trailer that their time was running short.
I can hold you.
With my own 2 hands.
I can comfort you.
With my own 2 hands.
But you've got to use.
Use your own 2 hands.
Now look at your own hands. Notice all the lines and the wrinkles and the calluses and the soft spots. Think of where they've been for the past 2 weeks. Who have they touched? What work have they done? Who have they held in comfort? Who have they congratulated in joy?
What can you do in a world where people are forced into homelessness by others, where the government refuses to take action, and where repairing is left up to volunteers? How can you use your own 2 hands?
Amen.
Amen.